Hello, my name is Dr. Christopher Padicky of the Ayer Historical Commission, and today is another installment of the Ayer Oral History Project. I'm sitting here today with Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hey Chris, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So, Mary, first of all, how would people know you around town?
Mary Markham.
Mary Markham. And when were you born?
I was born in July of 1960.
Cool. Where were you born?
I was born in Groton, although we did live in Ayer at the time.
So, was that like the nearest hospital at the time, to your recollection?
No, actually, we lived right next door to the Ayer Hospital up on Winthrop Avenue, but my mother delivered quickly, and they thought Groton was a better place for the family and the doctor to meet.
Cool. And you grew up in Ayer, Massachusetts?
I did.
Could you talk to us a little bit about your childhood growing up here, where you grew up, maybe what street, and if you moved around at all, and the school system?
I grew up on Highland Avenue, the top of the Highland Avenue. I said was next to the hospital. Pretty much lived there until the early 70s, and then we moved to High Street, and that's actually where I still currently live. It was a neighborhood. As a kid, I suppose you don't remember much about it. I do remember that, there's been a lot of building since I was a kid. We used to walk through the woods that's now like Berlinia Court to go to school, and there were two ways in which you could walk through. One was up by the old standpipes, and the other was put you out into what was Page Hilltop's playground area. So had both of those two paths by which you could go to. Which I find it kind of funny now that the number of bus stops that are from that school area to High Street now, when we used to just walk. The school district was there. From 4th grade on, I was in the Ayer public school system. Before that, I went to the Ayer Community School as a kindergarten, if you will, and then did a few years in St. Mary's Catholic school up on Shirley Street. They were full school, and it's now in the building that is now Kitty Depot.
Okay.
So was in that building for a few years, and then went to Hilltop. Page and Hilltop were not connected at that time. They were two separate schools.
So there were two separate schools?
There were two separate schools at that time.
And what was the difference between the two schools?
Hilltop was through grade 4, and Page was at middle school, 5 and 6. 7th and 8th were over in the junior high, which was a part of the high school, and then there was 9 through 12.
So after elementary school, where did you go?
Went to Page.
Okay, and then you went
over to the junior high school.
The junior high school. Is that where the high school is located now?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It was the junior high was more. I'm trying to think of the new layout. Was more like around the gym area.
Okay. All right.
It was like the industrial arts was there, which was like the shop was there in that area. But then around like that the hallway leading from, and it has changed since they've redone the school. I haven't been quite through it all. But we shared the same cafeteria. We didn't have separate cafeterias. We just had different cafeteria times. But it was sort of in that back part of the building the junior high was at the time.
Do you remember any of your teachers? Did anybody stand out to you? Made an impression on you?
I don't remember most of the teachers I had. Junior high was that one we sort of changed classes, so you had a lot of different ones. My father was principal of the junior high at that time. So I don't remember. I one, the gym teacher, who is still fairly locally, I believe, is I can't think of her last name now. Give me a minute on that one. Let me think of that.
Could you tell us a little bit about your parents and their connection to the town?
Yeah, my father grew up in town. My father was known around town typically as Neville Markham. He grew up in town. He was one of 5. He lived on He grew up on Highland Avenue, so he was there. He had a twin sister, and then his father and his brother Billy owned Markham Priest Insurance, or started Markham Insurance, and then they merged with Houghton B. Priest at some point in time. It became Markham Priest. And I had an Uncle Walter, and I had an Uncle Jack. Walter also lived in town. Jack, once he graduated, moved out of town and ended up in Washington, D.C. I did not know my grandfather. He passed away a couple months before I was born. My grandmother lived in town. She was in she used to sing in the choir at St. Mary's for years, not when I was growing up, but previous to that. And she was very friendly with Mary McGuan and Anna Horgan. So the 3 of them were very friendly. And she passed away in 1990.
How far back does your family go with the town?
My grandparents moved to town, and I don't know. I know I have been up to St. Mary's Cemetery, and I've seen some pretty early dates. I'm not sure of the exact date they moved into town. As I said, my grandparents were on Highland Avenue. My grandfather's sisters were up on West Main Street for a while. So 1900 is my best guess, maybe a little bit around there probably.
All right. Let's bring it back to your childhood. You mentioned a little bit about school and where you went to school. Could you tell us about what it was like being a kid when you were growing up, and what you did, like what some fun things you may have done around town?
There was, some of it was just, you had a bike or you walked, you were just out and about. Obviously, as you got older, not necessarily when you were really young. There were some kids in the neighborhood, mostly boys. I remember playing, we had a pretty big front yard, so we would get together and, you'd play, the typical things, kickball, baseball, or, wiffle ball, all of those different types of things. It was just sort of, you just found different things to do. It wasn't, things weren't a structure, so it wasn't necessarily, it had a play date or anything else like that. You just, went outside and found somebody to play with.
So going through school in Ayer from K through 12, the town's population and its history, especially after the First World War, was very influenced by Fort Devens. Did you have a lot of classmates who were in and out, or did you have a core group of friends that you were able to stay with K through 12?
So that was interesting in that point, because it was a lot more neighborhood driven at that time. So you knew kids in the neighborhood per se. Yeah, and there was a lot of military in and out. So you had those people flowing in and out of your lives that you knew for a short period of time, and then they moved on, or their father got transferred, and those types of things. changed a little bit as you got to high school, because then Shirley also came into the school system.
Hmm.
So you had Port Devon, Shirley, and Ayer. So you had sort of had that mix of people in and out of your lives all along. I don't remember specific, different things. That was a while ago, Chris.
Yeah, no. Just
Yeah.
to be clear for listeners, you said Shirley kids went to the high school. That's because we weren't the Ayer Shirley Regional School District at that
No.
time. We were the Ayer School District.
Correct.
But Shirley didn't have a high school, so it was one of the places where those kids could go. And
Yeah, and at that time, a good portion of Shirley kids came to Ayer. I'm not sure if Lunenburg was as much of an option at that time. Obviously, if they didn't go to the tech school, which still was Neshoba, Neshoba Tech, you could still go there. So some of the kids went there, like some of the Ayer kids went there, but those were,
okay.
you had, so most of the kids from Shirley came to Ayer.
Was, when you were growing up and you were going to school here in Ayer, was Ayer a more diverse community, or was it a more homogenous community?
It was very diverse, because you had the military.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of diversification in the military at that time. So you saw that in Ayer itself as a community. A lot of people stayed in Ayer because of Devon. So, they may have retired here or may have grown up here or grown up in the area but came back to this area because they had the ability to go to Devon's, to the PX or to the commissary and those types of things, or use the hospital. So you saw a lot of that as well too.
Would you say that the town really benefited from that relationship with the fort being so close?
Yes, I mean, even from the part of view of rentals, there was a lot of rentals in town, so you had that type of aspect of it. Financially, I'm not sure how that worked out. I don't remember. The schools benefited from it, and a lot of the different pieces benefited from it because based on the census in the towns, like towns got some money for schools, and I think probably it's my understanding that maybe police and fire, but I don't know that for sure. But I know like the schools got money based on populations of number of kids up there that then came into the school system.
Yeah.
Devon's did have a school, an elementary school, but all the junior high and high school kids came. And if they were living on Devon's, they went to the elementary school on Devon's. If they were renting outside, they came to Ayer. So it depended on where they were living.
So, you were in the town all of childhood. Was there any key events? I'm trying to think. You would have been, I think, 16 years old in 1976.
Yep.
When America turned 200. Do you remember anything about the town celebrating or key events that we have had?
There was a celebration too. There was also a celebration for when when was Ayer incorporated?
It was incorporated in 1871.
All right, so like in 1971, they had a big 100th type of event for it. 76, similar types of things. I remember parades, a lot of those types of things. At that time, the early 70s, they used to have a carnival down at the town park. I do remember that came in the summer. There used to be a bandstand down there too.
At Peroni Park.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I vaguely remember that. Probably closer to near where the playground was in that arena.
In high school, did you have a job in town?
I didn't have a job in town. I ended up, worked at the Rossley Motel scooping soft serve ice cream. On
Awesome.
Route 2A in Middleton. So yeah.
That's difficult. I might have sampled more than.
That was
I
just
served.
you got to get that cone just right. So I remember working there. But in town, you had Tom's Food World, which is up where Shop and Save is now.
Okay.
That was subsequently became Victory Market, who then became Shop and Save. That was there. There was Tony's in town, which is where Osawa's is.
What was Tony's?
Tony's was sort of like a breakfast lunch type of place.
Okay.
So it had like the marble counter. It was the old fountain. So you got your little paper cone in there, and they put the Coke in. You got your real Coke server.
All right.
Service, yeah. Breakfast. They did breakfast and lunch. They then expanded. They added another side, and it became the Trojan Room. So that ran more things at night. They did brought people in, some musical events in that area. But that was for older people. And that type.
Is there anything else you remember about Main Street and the businesses that were there at that time?
There was McGuan Shoe Store. That's where what's there? In McGuan's, it is where I believe J&S is.
Okay. Yeah.
What else was there? There was where Century Carpet was. It used to be the Woolworths. At the end spot was Bookberry. I believe that's now where Ravioli Theory and is it? I don't know what
It's
the
not
other.
Bar 25 anymore.
That's Ravioli
it
Theory.
changed, yeah.
And that would have been in that space there. There was underneath the covered portion of it, where Lucia's is now, was Abishans. Then there was the Air Department Store. There was Brown's Drug Store. Pierce's. And there was also a place called the Melody Hut. Then they sold records. And then in the corner where I believe, there's a hair salon there now. That was Fletcher's, which was a clothing store, similar to Lagos's.
Did the town have a 5 and 10?
That would be like Woolworths.
Yeah.
So that
okay.
was in that
Alright.
first area, yeah.
Alright. Was was billiards there at that time?
No.
No,
Nope.
that came in later.
That came in later. Upstairs, I'm not sure what was upstairs in that. There was a couple of rooms that they had up there. Some of them were also over in the across the street in the where the Berries own it, where like this Christian Science reading room is, and what is it, the Little Bee bookshop.
Yeah.
Up
Yep.
above there were some offices that people would rent, but I don't know exactly what was in there. Upstairs, near where Billy was there was an attorney's office up there, Holden. But I don't know what was in the rest of the building.
All right. Let's move beyond high school. So, what did you do after high school?
I went to college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college in Emmanuel College in Boston.
What did you study?
Business management.
And did you pursue a graduate degree?
I did.
In the same business management?
Yeah, I got an MBA from Assumption.
All right. What did you do as a career? Did you utilize your degree, or did
I
you
worked
get
for
into
North
another-
Middlesex Savings Bank
Okay.
for And then, when they were taken over, I worked for Main Street Bank. But
In town or at another branch?
I worked in town until we built an operations center over in Groton, and then I went over there. And that was, I remember when that was, 2006, somewhere around there. And then I was back and forth between Groton and Ayer for a period of time, and then eventually I was working down in Marlborough
Okay.
for about a while before I left.
So, aside from, did you live away for college?
Yes, I lived in Boston for college. Then I came back into this area. I was here. I got married in 1989 and was gone for about 17 years. We lived in Leominster. Had my children's school choice, my kids down here, because I was working in town, so it made sense to bring them with me. Plus, my parents were here.
So your family stayed in the community, and eventually you came back, right?
Came back. Yep.
Oh, whenabouts did you come back?
We came back in 2006. So we've been back about 20 years.
Excellent. Did you notice a lot of changes when you came back, or were you always kind of like keeping your finger on the pulse of the community?
I worked in town, so I saw a lot of it, and my parents were here. So we were in and out a lot of town, so you didn't necessarily... changes were probably just more gradual and just were more accepted, as you were going through them. Because I was in and out. Like I said, the building in town, like the building up here that they're doing, that, on the upper end of High Street, that they put in those houses, and then also when they did Berlinia Court, and now of course they're doing Lincoln Hill, and adding those.
So you were around or had knowledge of the community in the 1990s when the fort closed. Could you talk about how that impacted the community?
I think a lot of people thought that Ayer was just going to sort of die because it just took so much from Devons, or so many people worked for the federal government on Devons and those types of things. It took a while. I mean, it was slow, but it turned around, and it sort of has, in some respects, I think, benefited Ayer. One of the things that Ayer has going for it is we're on the commuter rail. So that gives people pretty good access into Boston and all those things for those who work there. You've also got pretty good access to Route 2 and 495. So the Ayer had a lot of benefits that I think, in some respects, the military leaving or pulling back opened eyes to maybe being able to other people to recognize that.
What would you say are some of the highlights of our community? Like, if I didn't know anything about Ayer, what would you say, like, come to Ayer and see this, we have this, we've got a few historic buildings, things like that?
We do have a lot of, I don't know if I'll go to historic, but in the area there's a lot of things I think that people could do or could take advantage of. As much as people may dislike the noise or whatnot, they have the racing up on Devons in that area, and people enjoy that. They have, what else is in town? The library is always a great place to go, and they did a great job, I think, of renovating that and adding on to it, but keeping the essence of what it looked like originally. The town hall's an interesting building. I think some of it, because it is so old, and how they've managed to use it but still keep some of the character in it. You think of some of the other towns who have had to, or who have opted to build new buildings. You lose some of that character of those buildings. As far as, what else to see. I don't know.
That's okay.
But like I said, there's usually, you can find stuff to do
Mm.
for the most part, and I think that's, the community as a whole is pulled together to put some of those things out.
Let's talk about that that sense of community, because you're active in the community, correct?
I am.
So tell us what you do for the community.
I'm on the Council on Aging Board. I'm currently the chair. So it's been interesting for me to see that. I also volunteer with AARP and do taxes in town at the senior center, and I'm also a volunteer with the SHINE program, which is the helping people with understanding their Medicare need. Medicare, when to sign up for it, help plans and those types of things. So I see a lot of people in the community, out of the community on those types of levels, but I think there is a pretty good sense of community in town. Probably different pockets of it, but I don't think that's, everybody has sort of their ideas of whatnot. So I think there are different pockets that people have for community interests, is that type of stuff.
Is that sense of community and people getting involved in the community to make Ayer a better place, is that something that's been consistent throughout your life, from your childhood to today, or is that something that has ebbed and flowed?
I think, like everything else, I think it ebbs and flows, depending on, different people who have been in town. It just sort of comes and goes. Some neighborhoods are closer than others. The neighborhood, and since you live one street over, Chris, this is a great neighborhood, and you see a lot of different people walking. Not necessarily from the neighborhood, but because it is such a walkable neighborhood, and the houses aren't cookie cutter houses.
We have a lot of beautiful homes here.
In this area, it's a nice area to look around and see all the different types of, except they were probably all built about that same timeline, that sort of probably, 1875 to, early 1900s and those types of things. But it does give people a sense that, oh, okay, this is what homes of that time frame look like. When was your house built?
1891.
You see, yeah. Our house was built 1900 is what they say.
This house?
This house,
Yeah.
They say that. Yeah. So I think you've got that. Like everything else is, some neighbors, you don't know other neighbors. And I think neighborhoods probably used to be a little closer depending on who was in them. But I think also too is with, the world has changed, that different travel needs have happened. People traveling for work or those types of things doesn't put them into that 9-to-5 job, so you don't see people as much. Or if they're commuting into Boston, it's an hour 10 minutes on the train, which is great, but that's also a long day for people, in those types of things. So sometimes you don't see them in those times. But I think there is a sense of community. Most people are friendly, say hello to, wave. You may not know their name, but you recognize their face and you know about where they live.
Yeah, and it's always been, since I've lived here at
Yeah.
least in this community, Ayer has never, or the people of Ayer don't seem to ever struggle when it comes to, like, we need this for the community.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get this for the community.
There always seems to be that pull for helping. I know for the schools, that's been. That was also too for the new senior center that the town approved. That the recognition that we need this. or that, you know, our school kids need that great thing, or, you know, the seniors need that place.
Mm.
And I think that's a truism that goes through the town, that recognition of that need. You know, part of that's also been, historically, Ayer has had lower taxes than some of its other neighboring towns. Littleton, Groton, Harvard, you know, sort of surrounded by those towns, and their taxes are higher. You know, so Ayer probably has benefited from some of people looking for some of those same type of benefits with a lower tax base.
Well, Ayer also has, I mean, we talked about a lower tax base for like residential housing, but Ayer has the benefit of commercial zoning
Yep.
and industrial zoning.
Yep, and that helps too.
Has that always been a feature as far back as you can recall? Has Ayer had
Obviously.
industry?
There has always been some industry in town. It has always been, you know, more of it probably came up as they started to build up like the Westford Road area with that. But there's always been some industry in town. Different pockets of it, you know, and it's, because Moore's has been there for a long time. You know, you've had the, you have the Devon Shopping Center, which was busier when Devon's was there, obviously. And you've had the Main Street, and the Main Street has always been fairly steadily busy, as I recall. You know, like I said, times change, you know, different people move on, you know, or they pass away and family doesn't want to take over something, so there's a turnover. You know, and yeah, when the military left, you lost some of those businesses lost some of that income. And probably like, you know, and like with COVID, that threw a challenge into people that how are we going to do it? We're going to keep, so we've got to keep separated. But I think the town's always sort of come back to we can do it and surviving.
So, you'd say it's a bit of a truism for Ayer that it changes with the time. It doesn't stick and stay kind of level. Like if there's something, then the town changes and adapts to overcome.
I think so. I think it has. But you know, others may disagree with me. But I said, you know, it's not staying in, you know, the mud. You know, it has moved. It has changed, and it is, you know, for good or for bad, however people see it. But it has changed, and it has kept up with some of the times. Yeah. But I can't.
Is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to mention or comment on regarding your life or your experiences with the town? Or
you know, my experiences with the town have always been positive. You know, moved back here after living in Leominster for 17 years. Been back longer. We lived in Leominster. You know, and Leominster's a city. So does it have more things to offer? Maybe, yes. But you know what's nice, and in the part of town that I live in, is the ability to walk to places. I can walk downtown. I can walk to the post office. You know, I could walk downtown for dinner. So there's those types of things. If I, you know, I could probably even walk to Shop and Save. You know, it's not...
I've thought about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I know being able to walk to dinner on Main Street is dangerous.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
For my wife and I, trying to fight, losing weight.
Absolutely. But look at it this way: as you're walking down and coming back. But there's also, also too is there's billiards. You could walk downtown for billiards. So I like where I live in Ayer because it gives me all of those different things and opportunities to do. We visit friends or we drive down different roads, and I'd be like, I could never live here. It's not because you're not close to that center, or they don't have that center. And I think that's a big part of liking that. I've been very happy here. It's like I said, yeah, I grew up here. So does that give me a little bit more of a bias towards the town? Maybe. That being said, there's a lot of building that's going on. So I see some of the land that, I used to walk through as woods, sort of just going away. And that's kind of sad in some respects, just to see it all become houses. And yes, there needs to be, don't get me wrong, there needs to be progress. There needs to be housing for everybody, but, I don't know whether or not every available piece of land has to be built up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really have anything else to say.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time and thank you for contributing to the Ayer Oral History Project.
Yeah.
We're always looking for new members of the town and older members of the town to tell us their stories and recollections from their life and town history.
I do think there are probably some other members of the community that you would benefit from hearing. And if I think of some names, Chris, I'll pass them along, like somebody who might have been in the military who settled here, who might have some different perspectives. I think, having all of those different types of options is a good thing. Putting everybody's perspective out there to it. Maybe also too is interviewing somebody who's new to town. But as opposed to
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for everybody. And before I sign off, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do with our seniors and helping them with their finances and their taxes. Work like that from folks like you who do a little bit extra to help our neighbors is always a wonderful thing. It's one of the reasons why I love this community.
As I said, everybody pretty much helps out and is respectful with all those different types of things. But thank you for asking me.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.